Hello and welcome to the Independence Anniversary edition of the program People, Politics and Power. I am Imoni Amarere. On Sunday, October 1, Nigerians waited with bated breath for the traditional Independence Day broadcast by the President. There were several reasons for the anxiety by Nigerians. First, it was going to be the first Independence Day broadcast by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. And second, it was happening at a time organized labor had vowed to ground the Nigerian economy by embarking on a total and indefinite strike over government's handling of the fallouts from the removal of fuel subsidy. Nigerians were very anxious to hear the plans that the government is putting in place to address the prevailing situation of hardship, unemployment, and insecurity across the country. The present broadcast did touch on some of these issues, but not as explicitly as many would have liked. It fell short of the expectations of those who felt it would address the demands of labor head-on and avert the planned strike and street protests. However, it appears to set the stage and basis for a resumption of the hitherto floundering negotiations between government and organized labor as they immediately resumed talks. And by late evening on Sunday, some agreements had been knocked out. But are the areas of agreement far enough to address the concerns of public sector workers who constitute, as we know, about 20% of the Nigerian workforce and the pains of other Nigerians? If not, what next? Join us as we examine the fast-changing developments in the government-labor relationship, and which, of course, might affect the planned strike and street protest by labor. Of course, we'll also be leading us into other national issues of interest to Nigerians. When we return from this break, we will get to meet our guests on the program. Stay with us.
On Twitter about the issue of low income workers only falling into the category of the wage bill, and they spotted that, and that has we did communicate with Mr. President, and he quickly did say and agree that that all categories of workers will be given the wage bill. We will hopefully, we expect that Labour will call a meeting of their various branches and executive tomorrow to present the agreements that have been reached, and we pray and we believe and we hope that the strike will be called off on Tuesday.
We looked at almost all the issues, all the promissory notes, from the government, and we looked at how to translate them to reality, and to be workable. And then we're going to take those promises to our organs. Of course, these people here cannot just wake up and review and call off action. So, like he said, we're hopeful that our organs will have a look at them and give us a fresh mandate on what next to do.
The Chief of Staff to the President, Femi Gbajabiamila, and the NSC President, Joe Ajero, who spoke on behalf of government and labor at the end of the meetings and negotiations that took place on Sunday afternoon, running through to Sunday evening. Now, as we speak, we understand that labor is consulting with its various organs across the country. That's talking about the NSC and the TUC, the two major labor centers in Nigeria. and hopefully we should be hearing from Labour anytime from now. Well, on the program, we're joined by a seasoned Labour activist, Comrade Issa Aremu, former Vice President of the Nigeria Labour Congress, former member of the National Salaries, Incomes and Wages Commission, and current Director General, Michael Imodu National Institute of Labour Studies in Ilorin, Kwara State. Comrade, thank you so much for joining us. Comrade, can you hear us? You need to unmute so that we can hear you.
I hope you are hearing me.
Yes, we can hear you now, comrade.
Good to hear your voice, and happy Independence Anniversary.
Happy Independence. Thank you so much. Well, we're also joined here in the studio by a young Nigerian, Eze Onyebuchi Chukwu, is founder of Society Wellbeing Advocates of Nigeria. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Happy Independence.
Right. And of course, like we said, we are expecting to be joined by a representative of Labour, specifically of the Nigerian Labour Congress. He is the chairman of the Nigerian Labour Congress in Zamfara State, Comrade Sani Halilu. But as we understand, there are meetings and consultations currently ongoing by the labour unions to decide on the way forward. When Halilu is free from that meeting, he hopes to join us very soon. Comrade Issa Aremu, let's begin with you. First, let's harvest your views on Nigeria at 63.
Well, I think my view cannot be different from the views of the 200 million plus compatriots who are quite excited and happy that Nigeria witnesses 63 years of sovereignty, of decolonization. And that is extremely very, very significant because we had effectively 100 years of British colonialism. You know, Lagos was effectively occupied in 1861 by the British colonial authority. If you realize that we got independence in 1960, that's effectively 100 years of British rule. But, you know, before then, we also had slavery, we had all forms of colonial and imperialist exploitation. So for the Federal Republic of Nigeria to have lowered the Union Jack and put our own flag, green, white, green. By the way, I decided to put on my green dress because I saw you guys, you've been doing wonderfully well. Talking about independence. But you more or less try to privatize your uniform. I said today I must put on my green, white uniform, which is also the uniform of Nigeria Labour Congress and TUC. So I think we should be upbeat that we are marking 63 years of independence. And I'm a child of independent Nigeria. You know, everything about me shows that Nigeria is working. You know, I mean, my grandparents didn't go to school. Independent Nigeria put me in primary, secondary, I went to university. Now with our profile, you know, we've gone to university, home and abroad, member of National Institute. I think if we look at critically, Nigeria has come to stay. And that's why I'm happy, you know, listening to President Bola Tinubu's speech. I think it was also very upbeat and paid tribute to the founding fathers and mothers of Nigeria who paid the supreme sacrifice. Interestingly, also included number one Labour man, Michael Imodu, whose my institute is named after. You know, he was also not just a trade unionist. He was on the National Executive Council of NCNC, the National Council for Nigeria and the Cameroon, so the party of Nnamdi Azikiwe of Zik, you know, which led the struggle for independence among other nationalists. So I think I am excited, and it has nothing on the imperative of independence. Don't also forget some countries that will go independence together. See what's going on in Sudan now. We go independence almost the same time. Sudan, first of all, broke into two. South Sudan, which also went into war. Now the main Sudan is completely in tatters. Somalia completely obliterated. I think there is a lot we must celebrate, that we have remained a strong, could be stronger, united country. With all the diversities and all the conflict, we had a civil war, we overcame it. And some children who are born after the Civil War, it's only a story that you have to tell them. They can't see, be scared. So I think that's to what extent my first takeaway, that I'm also in celebration mode.
Thank you so much, comrade. You, as you rightly put it, you are a child of Nigeria's independence. But there are those who never witnessed the independence in 1960, who were born so many decades after, and I'm sure that they must think differently from the way you're thinking now. And that's why we brought Chukwu along here to tell us, Onyebuchi, what your thoughts are as far as the journey to nationhood has been for Nigeria from the time you became aware of your environment.
Well, I wanted to start by saying that I came into this country in my early 80s. So if not for history, I wouldn't have known a lot of things that another brother just said now, the labor leader. But for the fact that we have history to know where we're coming from and where we are, I can only say that we have achieved results as a country, though we can always do better. You see, this country have had a lot of turbulences that we overcame. The military takeovers and the rest, the crisis that happened and all of that. And now we are in democracy for many years now, which we have not gotten there, but we are in the process. So I will give it to Nigeria that we have done well. We have not reached where we are going, but the country is trying. Comparing Nigeria to other countries that got independence the same time with us, I can only say that we are trying, but we are not yet there.
All right, comrade, let me come back to you. Now, the 63rd independence anniversary, some would say, is happening at a very unique time. At a time when, as it were, we are celebrating over 2 decades of uninterrupted democracy. And at a time, too, when we were almost going into a labor industrial crisis. And the expectation on Sunday was that the president was going to address all the issues and all the demands that labor was or have been making on this government since the removal of petroleum subsidy. Did the president's speech meet your thinking and your aspirations when it was made on Sunday? Or did he set the stage for further talks and negotiations?
Well, thank you, Michael. I think you put it very well that possibly more than ever before, this year's expected independence speech by the president was well, everybody looked forward to listen to the president for obvious reason, because the anniversary is taking place at a time that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has announced some reforms, especially the notable one being the removal of subsidy on petroleum. And of course, the new policy on foreign exchange. And all these have impacted, on the cost of living, on inflation, and labor are trying to respond, commendably, to represent the interests of their members, At the point, Nigerian Labour Congress had strike after there was no serious response or the kind of response expected from the government. So this year's speech, I think, as you said, everybody look forward to what will be the response of the government to the labor demands. I want to say that I would like to commend both the federal government and the organized labor for proving that we still have our industrial relations machineries for I think it's again dividends of independence. Don't forget that under the colonial administration, there was no freedom of association. Trade union as well as human rights were denied. It was the independent Constitution of 1960 that proclaimed the right for freedom of association, the right for expression, the right for trade unions to flourish. And today we have vibrant labor movement. Nigeria Labour Congress being the biggest and the oldest labor center. You have TUC made up of affiliate unions throughout the country, and they've been exercising this right. I came from that tradition. So it's quite significant that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu also recognized it in his speech. As a matter of fact, he eulogized and celebrated labor, as partners in development, as partners in the struggle for democracy. I'm also quite excited, and we issue a statement in that respect. After the president's speech, I said so that his speech has provided the platform for continuous engagement, because he made it known that there would be wage award for minimum wage earners, who they call low key workers, I guess the minimum wage earners. But it's not significant that both labor and government have been engaging, having dialogue, discussions. And it is now clear that the October 3rd proposed strike, could still be prevented once there is the spirit of compromises, and spirit of negotiation among the parties. And from the soundbite that we have gotten now, which you also play back, I think it is clear that there have been some level of resolutions. First, the principle of wage award has been agreed upon. It's about details. What should be the details of it. From what I've gathered now, I think I learned that the federal government has agreed in principle to give wage award of effectively 35,000, not just to the low minimum wage earners, but to all categories of workers. And I'm actually, that's extremely very significant. Again, other palliatives have been put in place. Presidents have assured that the CNG buses will soon be arriving, and that those buses will be made available to ameliorate the transport crisis that working people are facing. So I would like to say that so far, I think the industrial relation framework of constant dialogue and engagement between organized labor and government has been put to test. And I think to some extent we are getting some results. I'm also excited that through this engagement, both the TUC and NSC, they are now united. Don't forget at the point we are having some discordant voices, which is quite understandable because the two centers are independent on their own. But solidarity, unity is also very, very important if they have to get results. I'm happy to see the two centers now, engaging together, and putting this together. So to answer your question point blank, I think I would like to say, Makri, that at 63, we have democratic Nigeria that allow for freedom of association, freedom of for expressions, just like it was democratic Nigeria that fought for independence. Our founding fathers were Democrats, unfortunately, in 1966, we were military rule that trampled human rights and set us back in terms of development. Don't forget, trade unions also suffered. Some of the engagement we're having today, we couldn't have gotten them under the military. And that's why at 63, I think it's important that we also support the view of the President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, that we must reaffirm commitment to democratic process. Insufficient democracy calls for more democracy, not less. Because this engagement we're seeing with labor now, labor has the right to protest, to even strike. Government also is mandated dialogue to address the concern of the workers. All this can only flourish in an atmosphere of freedom and liberty, which with all the limitation of 1999 Constitution, we have all those rights guaranteed there. And I think it's also celebration of democratic process that we're witnessing today.
All right. Listen, for those of us who are outside of public service, for instance, so many people felt that the October 3rd plan by the NSC and the TUC to go on strike was justified to a very large extent, and in fact, we viewed it with a lot of trepidation because it was going to affect even those who are outside of public service in Nigeria. Now, if you look at what has happened in the last 48 hours, or maybe 24 hours, so to say, between government and labor, the negotiations that have gone on, and the agreements, or what the labor leader calls promissory notes that have been given, do you think that this has gone far enough to address and assuage the feelings of Nigerians?
Well, I don't think so. From the speech made by the labor leader, the labor chairman, you can hear him saying that they are going to take the message from the president to their members, and they will look into it and see if they hope that there will be good results. The truth is that the government over the years have not really done justice to this labor demand. And we were expecting that the speech made by the president yesterday would have addressed everything drastically. But from what I gathered from that speech, he had touched a lot of places anyways. And we know that the labor strike, if they eventually embark on this strike, is going to affect the poor and the needy as usual. The ordinary Nigerians are always at the receiving end of every battle between the labor and the government. So they have not done enough. I mean the government, on the side of the government, they haven't done enough to address these issues because the chairman didn't sound convincing that there won't be a strike. We're just hoping that after their consultations, they will come out and say they are not going to embark on this strike anymore.
All right. Comrade Aremu, let me get back to you and let us begin to break down some of the issues that have evolved in the last 24 hours or thereabout. A wage award of 35,000 from 25 that the president announced in his broadcast, it has now risen to 35. And from the low-level workers to cover every level of worker in the federal public service. Now, the question that have been asked in the last couple of hours has to do with what happens to other Nigerians who are outside of the public service, who are outside of the federal public service, who are maybe in the state public services and in the private sector. Will this wage award not be extended to these other areas? And who should, if that is the case?
Well, I think, Michael, I think what is significant is that we now have a template for further engagement. But what is clear is that I think we all agree now that there is what I call crisis of compensation in the country. we have a situation in which the pay of working men and women can hardly make them to work productively. With rising inflation, with devaluation of currency, with high cost of living, I think we can literally say that wages have collapsed, with all the implication for productivity, for motivation of the workforce. I used to joke that even now to have strike is like a strike is meeting a strike already because in most cases, when you go to workplaces, most workers can hardly survive to go to work because of high cost of transportation. And they've worked out series of arrangements in which some will come for work for 3 days. They have to cover each other up for all what it entails. You also know at a point, some state government actually even review the working days. So if you have a strike within that context, like already, there have been informal strike, caused by, complete collapse of wages. So there's first the crisis of compensation in this country. And to some extent, I'm happy that government has come to recognize that you can't have this prohibitive rise in the prices of transportation on basic goods for survival, and then you keep wages the way it is. So it was quite significant that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has announced the wage award of 35,000, initially 25, and as you said, from just the lowly paid now to all the workers in the public service. But as you said, that also raises the issue because we have workers who are in the private sector, we have workers who are in the states. So as they say, the devil is in the details, even though I don't want to use the word devil. I think godliness is all about details. I think it's now important for us to see how we play along in terms of relativity of pay of different categories of workers, even within the public sector, not to talk of between the public and private sectors. What we also with this one mean for minimum wage, because what it means effectively now is that minimum wage seems to have been jacked up now to 65,000. I mean, with that legal backing, that goes with it. And again, it's an award. I think that's why we need to get the details. They said just for a short period of time, for 6 months. Now, can you give an award to working men and women and later withdraw it? How will that play out? Again, those are issues that we need to address. But all this raises the point of the fact that all governments, including the federal government, must take labor issues quite serious because it's a specialized field. Labor is the most important factor of development. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has announced an 8-point agenda, fantastic agenda, eradicating poverty, fixing education, power, anti-corruption. All these 8 items cannot be driven unless you motivate the working men and women very well, because it is the workers that will drive this agenda. And you can't get it done unless you take them along, pay them very well, motivate them. It is then you can demand for discipline, you can demand for productivity. I think the lesson of this current crisis is that, the federal government has to equip the Ministry of Labor very well. The 2 honorable ministers have done very, very wonderfully well so far during this crisis. But the presidency has to also make sure that they are giving proper tools of engagement with organized labor. And we have the National Labor Advisory Council, which is also made up of NECA, Nigeria Employer Consultative Association, made up of NSC, TUC, of course, the Federal Ministry of Labor. I think we should allow those institutions to work very well. I mean, even the point you raised about the fact that President announced 25,000 for what they call low-key workers, and then later on, it's extended to all the workers abroad. Those are the kind of quality check, quality control that will have been done by the Federal Ministry of Labor, which has all the institutional memories. Again, we can't give any serious sustainable wage settlement, or whether negotiated or awarded, without the involvement of National Salaries and Wages Commission, which has a bad view, of the economy, ability to pay, sustainability, and even the needs of the workers, as the case may be. So, but what I'm excited over is that both the federal government and organized labor have gotten a truce now. I think it's now time for us to sit down on a sustainable basis to address some of those points you yourself raised. What happens to the private sector? And even the private sector, how many of them can pay to add 35 to existing 30,000 minimum wage without compromising the existing jobs? Don't forget, in private sector, it is what you sell that you can offer. And at the time we are talking of open unemployment of about 33%, you also have to balance remuneration with job protection, but on the whole, I'm happy that one takeaway from this independence anniversary is that willy-nilly, we have now agreed that labor matters and that nothing can be done unless we are concerned about the plight of the working men and women. Somebody talks of wealth of nation, but in recent time, people have talked of wealth of humans. That human beings matter more than anything before. So I think the takeaway from the current challenges is that it is not time to strengthen labor market institutions very well, starting with the Ministry of Labor. The honorable two ministers, are doing very well. The presidency have to back them up to make sure that they are given the tools of engagement with organized labor. Then there should also be machinery for collective bargaining that should be more regular. Very well. National Labor Advisory Council must be seen to work because it's a specialized field. It's like money market. It is like capital market. Labor market is specialized. So it cannot be done in an ad hoc manner. It has to be done in an organized manner because it has implication for the economy. Every negotiation you carry out, every settlement has implication for the economy. We must enhance purchasing power so that workers can buy goods and services, turn the economy around. But you must also give the offer that is sustainable. And this is where the point Comrade Jiro raised about all these are promissory notes until they are translated to reality. But every move we want to make, I would suggest that we should do so through collective bargaining, through social dialogue. And that's the way to go, because disruptions, whether by locking out workers or by strikes, only take us back rather to address the problem at hand. So,
all right, Comrade, I'll come back to you in a moment. There are a number of very critical issues that you have raised that we need to push further. But I'm told that Comrade Sani Halilu, who is the chairman of the Nigerian Labour Congress, Zamfara State Council, fresh from a meeting, has just joined us. Thank you so much for joining us, Comrade Sani Halilu. Comrade Halilu, can you hear us?
Clear. I hear you.
Welcome, Comrade Halilu. Yes. We understand that you have been at a meeting all morning. What is the situation at the moment? What has Labour decided?
Decide, it's a fine. People have.
We appear to be having some connection challenges with Comrade Halilu, so we'll try and fix that very quickly and get back to him. Comrade Sani Halilu is the chairman of the NLC Zamfara State Council. We'll get back to him in a short while as soon as we fix that challenge. But let me get back to Comrade Issa Aremu. Before we gloss over this issue? It appears, I mean, from your vantage position as a labor leader and activist, it appears that in the negotiations, labor seemed to have taken care of only public sector workers. What happens to other sectors that labor and the other Nigerians that labor has always claimed it is fighting for?
Well, I'm not sure that would be fair, Makere. If you look at the demands of labor and even the resolutions that have come out so far, even though subject to ratification of the organs of the two labor centers, and if you also take the president's speech to address the matters arising from the subsidy removal on petrol, you will know that the issues affect all Nigerians. And to that extent, we need to salute organized labor for carrying the burden, which ordinarily some of the issues ought to have been addressed even by our senators, our representatives, our governors, because the primary mandate of a trade union is to defend the interests of its members. And the members are those who pay union dues, who are members of the union. So if you increase the price of petrol, ordinarily, the best unions could have done would be to say, wait, give us more wages so that we can cope with the rising cost of transportation. But organized labor has gone beyond that to look at the bigger picture, to say that we must have buses, and I think we have the CNG buses now being bought into by the government to be provided. Government also agreed to make some funds available for small and medium enterprises. Not only that, intervention fund was made available to state governments. So you can say that organized labor has not been, have been largely selfless in their pursuit. But at the end of the day, they must also make things for their own members. And what labor has even been asking for over time is that the need for proper negotiation so that they can put all the issues on the table. And I hope after this engagement, they will return back to that network to address the concern, as you say, of the workers beyond the federal employees. Even the issue of national minimum wage is also due for review next year, which will cover all sectors. I think maybe it's not time that the panel have to be put in place, which will include all the stakeholders, mostly tripartite government, organized labor, employers in the private sector. But that's why I say that this is really largely work in progress. And that's why there are more issues that will arise. I mean, will come up immediately after we cross this bridge of tomorrow, because it's now, after meeting with their organs, NSC will be able to go back on the drawing board to see need for continuous dialogue based on what is already on offer. And that will now mean that, what does this award mean beyond the federal employees? What does it mean for the states? What does it mean for those who are in the private sector? And if you say it's for a period of 6 months, what happens after that? We can be on and on. Again, those are issues that will be discussed extensively. So I would like to say, Amakere, that Labour has given the template together with the government for further engagement in a way that we can address what have caused the existing crisis.
All right, comrade, thank you. Eze, let me come back to you here in the studio for somebody who is...
I think it's ease of work. So
comrade,
listen to our colleagues.
Yes. We are trying to link up with our friends and comrades from the meeting to see and hear from them exactly what has taken place. We're making that effort. We were on with Sani Halilu in Zamfara. We are hoping that we are able to reconnect with him. But in the meantime, I'm going to ask this question for somebody who is outside of public service, who is outside what I would term the coverage area of the labor unions. Do you feel comfortable, or do you feel betrayed by the level of negotiations that has gone on that appear to only favor those of them who are in the public service?
Well, I was going to say that labor is mostly agitating for their own interest. But you can hear from the comrade, he said that their primary duty is to agitate for the interest of their members. And maybe that is why they are called interest group. But the truth is that it should go beyond labor alone. Those of us who are not in the public service also need issues that the government should address. Issues like unemployment, issues like poverty in the land, the crisis of inflation, the transportation issues now that has even made the government to a kind of adjust working days for public servants. Me as a member of a non-public sector, I don't feel I am being accommodated by labor, though most of the agitations is also overflowing to the other sectors, like the decision of government to release funds to the states for infrastructure, and also the interventions
the provision of funds for micro and small scale enterprises. There's also the payment of 75,000 to 15 million households at 25,000 naira per month.
Yes.
For 3 months. That's from October to December.
And the promise of paying another 15 million vulnerable households going to receive cash transfers. They are fine. At least they are coming from the demands, the pressure that labor is putting on government. But the truth is, labor is mostly fighting for their own interests.
But as a young Nigerian, do you think that the interests of young people are being accommodated by these negotiations and, in fact, by government policies so far?
Not at all. Not at all, because the youths of this country have a lot of issues being unaddressed. The issue of unemployment is number one, and we know that it's not possible to kind of employ everyone, but there are also ways of mitigating the hardship on those who could not get employment, like skills acquisition and the rest. So attention should be paid to areas like skills acquisition, getting those who are not employed to train them in skills where they can employ themselves and even employ others. Is also that sector, government should look into it, and not just because the emergency solution that government is giving now to these labor agitations is mostly to stop the strike, to stop labor disturbing the government. It's not necessarily for the general good of the young Nigerians. So government should do well to bring in a lot of programs that will lift the youth off the streets. You understand? So even the issue of insecurity and every other societal ills is still tied to poverty, unemployment, and the rest. If we have our youth gainfully employed or engaged in one skill or the other, they will have no time for crimes. They will have no time for thuggery during elections and the rest. And there are a lot of things you will not see them engage on, especially women. Most of them who are in the street doing what they are doing, they are doing it because they have no help. Some of them even get trained on skills, and they couldn't see money to start up. So that is why I'm even appreciating what the president mentioned in his speech yesterday, saying that they are going to release funds for some micro, those small businesses and the rest. So
micro and small enterprises.
So I think the government should look more into programs that will carry the youths, lift the youths off poverty. This is one of the reasons why we have crisis in the country. Settling the issues of labor is good, fine. Of course, those who are working and making sure the country keep going should be settled well. But the youths, the young people, they are the strength behind every criminality, every violence, and what have you. So if we're able to tackle the youths, provide their needs, do the needful for them to be gainfully employed or engaged, most of the things we are fighting with guns would have ended.
All right, Comrade Issa Aremu, let me get back to you. Unfortunately, we are unable to link back with Comrade Sani Halilu. Okay, great. I understand that Comrade Sani Halilu is with us now. Thank you so much for all the efforts being made, right? So we understand you are just back from a meeting of one of the organs of the labor union. What is the present situation?
Yes, so the present situation was discussing is ongoing. Just as Arimu has earlier said, the plan to put things together by the federal government, that there are an increment to the federal civil servant, while the state are in bad condition. You see, we have so many issues to address with regard to this issue. So when you look at the countries that Aremu is naming, that we have started as independent with them, now they are nowhere to be found. These are the common issues that lead to their situation. We have tribalism, we have poor policies, we have corruption, we have election rigging, and everybody knows. But for us to stand and address it, we could not. Sometimes somebody that you elect to go and serve you will go and become haunting you. Look at this situation. Somebody that you elected, he went and on the fourth day, he says he removed subsidy without looking at the situation. For you to talk, people come to say so many things they wish. So in me, now the state, I'm talking of myself, I'm not talking others. We will not allow this strike to go like this without knowing our stand. That is number one. Number two, if you go around the state, there are states now that are having backlog of gratuity, pension, salary, uncountable. All these were not looked at, were not treated, and then
Comrade Halilu, are you still with us?
they come to start that this is that is the problem. If things were not addressed properly, we will not get to where we are going. But we thank God Almighty that take us to this day, and we thank God Almighty that we have your tribe. All these media that are trying to put this together, that are trying to let people understand the situation of government. In addition, the labor has never for once think of only the working class. But I have been saying, what are people that are
Comrade Halilu, are you still with us? Because we need to know at this point in time whether or not labor is proceeding with the strike or not. Well, we appear to have lost contact with Comrade Sani Halilu. Comrade Sani Halilu is the chairman of the Nigerian Labour Congress, Zamfara State Council. Thank you so much for making all the effort to be with us. And Comrade Issa Aremu, 30 seconds, your closing thoughts. Okay, all right. Let's thank Comrade Issa Aremu, former Vice President of the Nigerian Labour Congress, former member of the National Salaries, Incomes and Wages Commission, and he is the current Director General of the Michael Imodu National Institute of Labour Studies in Ilorin in Kwara State. And of course, right here in the studio, we had Eze Onyebuchi Chukwu, founder, Society Wellbeing Advocates of Nigeria. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, sir.
All right, that's our program for today. Please join us again when we bring you a fresh edition of People, Politics and Power. And this is hoping that the Nigerian Labour Congress, the TUC, and all other labor unions that are primed up for this strike would eventually find reason to reach some basic agreements with government and accept some of the issues that have been put on the table, some of the agreements that have been reached, and spare the country and the Nigerian economy the prospects of an indefinite strike and possible disruption of lives. Thank you so much for joining us. Bye for now.